I get long pauses at a party when they say, well, what do you do? Well, I make furniture. Oh, and then I have to sort of explain, or what type of furniture do you make, which is a difficult question to answer. I probably should have pictures to show, but I think there needs to be a lot of explaining what handmade furniture is, how it's made, and in general, no, I don't think people really understand it completely. I became interested in woodworking in junior high school in about 1971. Back then, boys took industrial arts, girls took home economics, and I hated it. I had really no fine motor skills developed yet, but then we worked on the wood lathe, and the teacher gave us Honduras mahogany, which is really fantastic wood to work with. Even today, I really enjoy working with it, and it just captured my attention immediately. So that was the beginning, and my dad bought me a wood lathe not too much later, maybe 6 months later, and that's how it all began. This is the wood lathe that my dad bought me when I was 12, and it's my sentimentally favorite machine of my workshop. But this takes me back in time to when, living in my parents' house as a 12-year-old. This was the machine that we had set up in our garage. I was the only one to use it. My brothers had absolutely no interest. My dad never touched it, so I'm the only person that's ever worked on this 40-year-old machine, and where it all began. This knob will be on a piece that I'm working on now, and I'll match this. I'll make a second knob, and it's the drawer knob for a small nightstand. It has a long, narrow drawer. I love making these small pieces. It's proportionally a little bit odd because it's so long and thin, but it looks great once it's on the drawer. We started to buy wood from all around the world, and the wood we would bring home had this incredible smell, aroma, and it was hard as a rock, and it would polish like stone, and so it was just so intriguing to me, and the colors were just so different, these incredibly vibrant colors and an intense smell. I was hooked more on the wood itself than on the process of working with it, and that's something that still grabs me. The smells of certain types of wood still bring me back to that time. This is a piece of Osage orange, and it has a brilliant deep orange color. When it's cut, it'll be yellow, and within a few hours it'll come back to this deep color. And Osage orange grow, at least in Illinois, the big green hard apples, and it's really brilliant wood. Now this is a piece of Zirconi, which is African, and I purposely haven't planed this because I want to keep it as thick as possible, so that when I go to use it, the thicker and the larger the better it is. It gives me more opportunities to decide on how I'll use it. With a really close look though, this grain pattern is more apparent. That's just so much different than anything that grows domestically. And it's also weighs a ton. Having a career making handmade objects didn't seem possible, and I was mildly interested in furniture making as a career, but it seemed that you'd work in a factory and be loud, dusty, noisy type of thing, which I didn't want to do. I thought I wanted to have a little more refined lifestyle. I went to Illinois State. My degree was in education, partly so I could be around a wood shop, and partly so I could be a coach of some sort, cross-country track coach. I was interested in teaching, but I found it just wasn't enough. I wanted to do my own work, and I really enjoyed working with the kids on the good days. And the bad days, I knew it was time for something else. This is my bandsaw, and this is the backbone of my workshop. The machine that I use to cut all the curves. It's a Yates Y20. It's a very good thing. And before I owned this machine, my work was very straight, and now it's very curvy, and I owe it all to this machine. I design work in a few different ways. Sometimes I will just design a piece just in general, just to make. And then if someone come to me and ask me to make them a specific piece, I do a lot of drawing right in my mind. In my mind's eye, I can envision pieces, I can rotate pieces, and I can see, and I have a very vivid drawing. And that is really my strength, my ability to see, and maybe a little bit of ingenuity to take that image in my mind's eye and then sit down and start sketching on paper. I like to draw by hand as a opposed to computer-generated drawings because I just feel like they're more lifelike. A computer-generated drawing is perfect, which is not what I like to see in a drawing. It's not lifelike enough. A hand-drawn drawing is in parallel to what I do with the wood. It's done by hand. It is meant to look like it's done by hand, and it has a life of its own. Mostly I think I make small tables, and they are becoming now more and more sculptural, and because of the scale. They're smaller, they're more manageable. And I have been developing a rocking chair, although the very first one was probably the best one. My son Stuart, when he was 4, asked me to make him a rocking chair, and I was shocked and rather flattered. And at that point I had really been working hard on rocking chairs, so his was scaled down to about 75% of the full-size chair. And something about that slightly smaller scale, the proportion of it, even though it was proportionally identical to the full-size, it just aesthetically was just a beautiful piece, and it just functions so beautifully still. And it was made for a small child, and now, a full-grown kid. I applied to be an artist in residence at Anderson Ranch Art Center in Somas, Colorado in the winter of 2004. And the program is meant for artists to essentially get themselves to a point of discomfort, to push yourself to a place you don't want to be and see and discover what you can do, and not to repeat your own work and not to do what you're doing, but to go someplace else, which is, in my case, to loosen up my work a little bit, to use materials other than just wood. Some of the things I do are a little more abstract. My work was very, not in a bad way, but very structured. It's less structured now, in a good way. I'm comfortable using paint here and there, mostly on decorative pieces like mirror frames, not very often in furniture, but now and then. But I think that it was a really great success. It was the first time I lived and worked with other artists, really, as an adult. And now I'm subconsciously changing my work as a result of the influences there. I set out to make a very flamboyant piece, both with material and with shape and with texture, trying to combine all of those things and keep it from becoming too gaudy, but to really grab attention. This is the life of the party kind of a piece. It has a two-piece top in that the walnut is nesting into the ash, and to get that intersection to happen was rather tricky. It's very abstract, that combination of things, so I had to keep sort of removing wood from the ash and then setting the walnut into it and see if it nested the way I was hoping it would. And then the legs, each one is different from the rest. They're 4 asymmetrical legs. Very similar, but it takes a little bit of studying. Each has a little bit of a different curve. The rails are a combination of 5 pieces here, all sort of overlapping, and the idea was just to have in contrast direction of grain along with texture, just have the whole piece flow together. Each individual element stands out. No one specific element is stronger than the other, but together there's just all sorts of specific little minor subtle details combined to make one really what I feel like is one of the grandest pieces I've made in a really a small scale. So what I do is not, to me, is not a job necessarily. I don't think of it necessarily as a business, but it's just my creative life's work. I sort of compare myself with maybe musicians or painters or writers that they're creating not because it's their job, but it's because it's what they do. It's just within them. And so what I'm creating is not to meet a standard of perfection, but I'm creating it because it's for a person or for a family, and it becomes part of their home, and when they'll feel a connection with this object or furniture, it enhances their life in a soulful way, because it's nice to be surrounded by things that are made by hand, made with a lot of thought, and really all of my energy put into it. And so the people who want me to make things want to own what I make because it has a certain energy about it, and brings a little bit of happiness to a room, and warmth to a room, and curiosity to a room. So sitting and looking at a piece, you're sort of curious about it, and it kind of brings out maybe a little bit of your own energy and happy feelings.